Yo! Yo! Welcome back to 1497 Podcast. We're back after a week of break and a lot of stuff that was going on. It's your boy, Jonathan Keaton, in the house. Right beside me is the greatest co-host to ever walk his right foot and left foot on planet Earth, Mr. Michael Wood, a.k.a. the Woodster, a.k.a. Mr. Wood, a.k.a. Michael Wood. Mike, how you doing, man?
I'm doing really good. I head back to school tomorrow, so I got a eight-ish hour drive ahead of me. So not looking forward to that. But other than that, I'm doing good. You know, Georgia won the Natty last night, which we're going to get into in a second. But I won not money. I bet True Moo chocolate milk on that game. So I won 5 gallons of True Moo chocolate milk. So you know, I'm feeling good. All is right in the world today, at least through my eyes. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm getting back in the process of getting back into that school mentality because I got school coming up as well. Other than that, happy that Georgia won. Happy that Buffalo's in the playoffs. And yeah, it's gonna be fun, baby. So I can't wait for us to talk about Georgia right now.
Yeah. So clearly the biggest story with Alabama was they lost Mechie in the SEC championship game. So they didn't have him for Cincinnati, and it was apparent. You could tell in that first round game against Cincinnati that they were missing him. But obviously Cincinnati was just no match for Alabama, so it didn't really matter. But then obviously what's his name goes down. And they literally couldn't get the ball to anyone. They were throwing to freshmen out there. Their corners were freshmen or sophomores and just had no playing experience, or this was like their second game. So the story for Alabama was they had to play a lot of inexperienced guys because people were hurt. And the story for Georgia was Stetson Bennett kept making little mistakes that seemed like they were going to cost the team. And then he bounced back. And that was the story of Georgia's season. They dominated all year, and then they had one setback, and everyone wanted to know how they would bounce back. And Georgia did just that in a big way. Not necessarily dominated, but this final score looks like they dominated the Crimson Tide. And congrats to Kirby Smart in Georgia, because it's a big win, and I'm not sure a lot of people really expected it. But roll Dogs.
Yeah, yeah, I didn't expect it. I don't really expect it either. I thought Alabama was going to come out on top, but them losing the receiver, getting close to the end of the first half was huge for them, as you hit on, because they weren't able to really produce offense besides their freshman tight end that caught that touchdown pass, and their only touchdown pass in the whole game. So what my story of the game is how Georgia's defense is just so stifling, and how some of those players might declare for the draft, so they might lose some of those guys that helped them get to the point that they got, which is a national championship. But I was really, really impressed by the way that they were forcing pressure into Bryce Young, because Bryce Young wasn't able to pick up on his routes that fast, and he had to force a lot of balls. You saw the forced ball on the little out route in the end zone when I think it was like 4 minutes left for Alabama. That could have been a touchdown right there. So Georgia's defense played amazing. Stetson Bennett gets a lot of credit too, and not a lot of people are giving him credit because they're just saying it's a defensive show. But Stetson Bennett also had a touchdown to put them up even more, and he played great. So good win for Georgia, and I can't wait to see, because the Georgia plays Oregon first game of the season next year, and I think their defensive coordinator is going over to Oregon, so that's going to be a good game to watch.
Yeah, I think next year is going to be a whole different land. This year was already a pretty different landscape for college football, but next year we're going to have Cincinnati will be back. I don't think they're going to be one of the Final Four teams, but they'll be back. USC is going to be really good with Lincoln Riley, all the transfers that they're getting, potentially getting Caleb Williams here in the next few weeks. So there's going to be a lot of big teams. Oklahoma State is, as of right now, the biggest threat to the Big 12, and being a playoff team out of the Big 12. And then Michigan and Ohio State, those two teams are going to be threatening, and Michigan State as well. So there's a lot of teams that I expect to make some splashes next year in college football. And believe it or not, I'm going to say right now, Georgia will not be one of them. They're not going to be a team that we talk about a lot next year, outside of the beginning of the year when they're winning some games and coming off a natty. But at the end of the year, Georgia won't be in the conversation. Just looking at who they have right now, and you know what, we might revisit it when it gets there. But as of right now, I don't think Georgia's a team that I look at and I'm like, I think this team could repeat. Right now, it's Alabama and then the rest of the country. So we'll
For
see how
me,
it plays out.
my bad to cut you off there. For me right now, I think Penn State and Ohio State are going to make it back in that mix. I think Ohio State, they're going to be on a redemption tour for the season CJ Stroud had and the season that he had with Jackson Smith and Jigba and Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. I think Chris Olave is going to declare for the draft. I haven't heard any news from that, but I think CJ Stroud took a really big step in his freshman season, and he's going to take an even bigger step. I'm predicting that he's going to win the Heisman next season because I think he's going to have the season of his life next college football season. And then we go to Penn State. Penn State started off the season hot with their defense being this bend don't break defense, and then they ran into Iowa, and then they ran into a couple other tests. But I think Penn State, despite them not winning their bowl game, and despite them spiraling out of control, I think that we will be able to see Penn State and put them in the conversation of the college football playoffs, especially if it gets expanded. Excuse me.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to get expanded. They had like the meeting, and they said no conclusion was reached. So next year won't be a new college football playoff. But I agree with you talking about Penn State, Ohio State, and then I mentioned Michigan State and Michigan. The Big Ten is going to be the biggest player in college football next year. I don't think they're going to have the number one team in the country because I think that will be Alabama. But they'll have the most teams in the mix just because the Big Ten, even Nebraska won't be they won't be a top 5 team, top 10. But I think Nebraska's going to sneak into the top 25. They got a lot of good transfers. They got the quarterback Casey Thompson from Texas, and then they got a transfer receiver from LSU. They have the LSU receivers coach coming over. They got Pitt's offensive coordinator from this year coming over. So Nebraska's going to be a big team to watch out for, not to make the college football playoffs, but to threaten some of those teams like Ohio State, like Penn State, and potentially beat them and force them out of the college football playoffs. So next year is going to be a whole lot of fun, and I already can't wait.
Yeah, same. And one more thing I'll add, I got to throw in my Arizona State Sun Devils in there. I think Arizona State's going to they made a splash into the top 15 a little bit, and they crept into the top 10, or they touched the top 10, but they didn't really creep inside the top 10. But I think they can do that this year. They did lose one of their freshman receiver. That was a big blow to their future wide receiving core. But the coach that they have in Herm Edwards and all the recruits that they are gaining from the success that they had this season, I wouldn't be surprised if we see Arizona State do even better than what they did this season.
Yeah, I mean that's the whole point that I was trying to make. Arizona State's a team I forgot about, and you're completely right. I think they finished like 12, I want to say, but when we were making those top 25 lists, both of us always had Arizona State like around 15, like 15, 16 area. So yeah, they're a team that's going to make a splash, and I agree with you. I think they might be able to finish top 10. And hey, if they win some games that are toss-up games, Arizona State might be somehow a team we're talking about for the college football playoffs. So yeah, next year is going to be very, very exciting, and I'm sure we missed a whole lot of teams that are going to be competitive next year.
Yeah, we'll get to those when the time comes. Right now, we got to talk about, I know we weren't planned on talking about this, but what happened to the Colts, man? It's like the Colts go into their they play at home and they lose to the Raiders. And then they're in a position you win and you're in. And I think no one expected them to play bad, but to play bad and lose, there's got to be some questions from the Colts fan base and the people that had the Colts so high going out of the AFC. Like, what is your thought process right now with everything unraveling about the Indianapolis Colts?
Yeah, so I think we tie this one in with the topic of should the Colts fire Frank Reich. But I'll start by talking about what happened. What happened is they got their heads big. They kind of guaranteed themselves that they were going to win, and obviously we saw it just didn't happen. Yeah, I mean, I was one of those people. You said those people who had the Colts going far in the AFC. I was one of those people. I had them coming out of the AFC and going to the Super Bowl. And honestly, I stand by that. I think if they were in the playoffs, they would have a real shot at doing that. The reason that they lost to the Jaguars, I couldn't tell you. They beat the Patriots bad. They did unspeakable things to the Buffalo Bills. The one team in the AFC they really couldn't conquer was the Tennessee Titans. But other than that, the Colts were just dominating everybody that had any sort of AFC playoff chance. And then it comes down to the Raiders and the Jaguars. I'm rooting for the Raiders now because I really like Derek Carr. He's gone through a lot this year. But besides that, yeah, I mean, the two teams you have to beat are the Raiders and the Jaguars. They had to win 2 of their final 3 games between the Patriots, Raiders, and Jaguars. Everyone's like, okay, Raiders, Jaguars. They won't be the Patriots. Turns out they beat the Patriots and lose the 2 games they were supposed to. And we asked the question, should the Colts fire Frank Reich? I say no, but he's going to be on a really, really short leash next year because how can you not beat one of those 2 teams knowing that you're fighting for your playoff life? It's ridiculous. I don't know what happened. I couldn't tell you. Jonathan Taylor played okay. Carson Wentz did not play very good. I watched the game. His pick wasn't a great throw. Which he didn't play terrible like a lot of people were suggesting. Carson Wentz had a really good year, really good bounce back year. But yeah, the Colts didn't have a whole lot of problems, if I'm being honest, this whole season, except for injuries in the beginning of the season. But then they were fine, and then somehow you fall apart against one of the worst teams in recent memory. It's ridiculous. I don't know what happened.
In that Raiders game, because I went back to watch that Raiders game and the Jaguars game earlier today, and the one thing that you can notice from both of those games is the Colts starting slow and their opposition starting fast. Derek Carr was 5 for 5 for 6 or 6 in his opening drive, and Trevor Lawrence was dealing 8 for 8 on their opening drive. And once they got off to those hot starts, it's like the Colts were like regressing, and then they made their stand and then just kept on regressing from that. And I don't think you can do that with these teams. You can't give these teams hope. You have to, when you get the ball, you have to drive it down the field. You have to know what you're dealing with. And if you know that you win all your games with Jonathan Taylor running the ball, then run the ball, because then once it gets stopped, that's going to open up play action. That's going to open up the quick pass. That's going to open up a lot of things for your offense. So going into the offseason, the Colts got to do a lot of reevaluating as to what their game plan is going into games. I think they really got caught up in making those game plans going into the games, because once they stuck to one thing and it didn't work, they tried to make adjustments, and those adjustments didn't really work. So great win by the Jags, great win by the Raiders. And with the wild card coming up, I want to say that the Bengals are on upset alert, but I'm going to take a different path here. And I'm going to say that the Buccaneers are on upset alert.
You want to explain that one? Because listen, I'm an Eagles fan, but I do not agree.
I think the Buccaneers are on upset alert because their secondary is still pretty injured. Levante David, I think, David's out for the season, and they're just too depleted on defense. And what the Eagles have been doing so well is running the ball. So not only that's going to kill time in the game, Levante David, I think, was a left outside linebacker. So I think they're going to run. I think their game plan is they're going to run everything towards the left side, because that's their weak side, and they want to attack their opponent from the weak side. And as they start dealing it from the pass, Jalen Hurts could look like a Hall of Fame quarterback against that secondary, because that secondary has took so many injuries throughout the season. Now, if Tom Brady gets the ball with a minute or so odd seconds left, then that's ultimately tough for the Eagles, right? But Tom, he has to prove. I think he's in this season. We're going to get into Tom later, but he's at a part of this season where if he wins the bowl this year, it separates him from Rodgers. It separates him from the GOAT conversation. Like it solidifies his GOAT position. But that's why I think the Eagles can upset the Buccaneers.
All right. The Eagles, my team. Let me walk you through this. The Eagles on the season have played 8 teams that are in the playoffs and 9 teams that are not in the playoffs. The Eagles' record is 9-8. Those all 9 of their wins are against teams that are not in the playoffs. Not a single win against a playoff team. Not a single one. They played the Buccaneers already. They lost. It was a close game. I'll give them that. The Eagles have played teams close. They have played teams close, but not a single win against a playoff team. There's just no confidence, personally for me, that you can tell me a first-year coach and Nick Sirianni, who, by the way, we just talked about this guy, is a Frank Reich disciple. You cannot tell me that this guy, a first-year head coach, Frank Reich disciple, a choker, is going to go into Tampa Bay and beat the greatest quarterback of all time, in many people's eyes, obviously not mine, but
yes,
that's just not happening. The reason I bring up Frank Reich is the Colts were the best team in the NFL through 3 quarters. Best team in the NFL. And you're like, wow, that's pretty impressive. They were the worst team in the 4th quarter. Worst team in the 4th. That's why the Colts didn't make the playoffs. But are the Eagles going to beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? Not a shot. The team, there are, however, I'm not going to say 4 and 5. 4 seeds are on upset alert from a 5 seed because those are such close games. And but I will say that the San Francisco 49ers have a chance of upsetting the Cowboys. San Francisco 49ers will upset the Dallas Cowboys in Jerry's world. And I won't say 100%, but the Bills are also on upset alert against the Patriots. Both 3 seeds really need to watch their back. I'm going to lean more towards the 49ers beating the Cowboys than the Patriots beating the Bills. I trust Belichick more than I trust Shanahan, but I also trust Josh Allen a million times more than I trust Mac Jones. And that's the quarterback play. And say what you want. I know you're a huge Dak Prescott guy. Jimmy Garoppolo, when the lights are the brightest, that's when the man plays the best. So Jimmy G's been in a Super Bowl already. Dak Prescott has very, very slim playoff success. I don't think he has any. So I'm rolling with the 49ers to beat the Dallas Cowboys.
You're going to be shocked with this next statement that I make. I'm in 100% agreement with you. I think the 49ers are going to upset the Cowboys. And I'm a big Dak guy. I still stand. He's top 10, top 5. Top 5 is I understand it now. He was top 5 earlier in the season, and then his calf injury happened, and then it just kind of went south from there. But they just haven't been doing the same thing that they were doing earlier in the season. It's like Zeke gets going, and then Dak doesn't do good. Dak does good, Zeke doesn't do good. It's a seesaw effect, and I think they can't really have that seesaw balanced out to where Zeke is doing good and Dak is doing good. And when they get it balanced out, it just starts going over one way and then going back to the other way, game in and game out. It's just inconsistent. For the Eagles, I will say this. With some of those games that they played against those playoff teams, you mentioned it. They played close games, and I think you can take that with a grain of salt. You can look at it and you can tell yourself, okay, if they were to play this team in the playoffs, it's going to be a close game. They're not going to get ran over by this team. It's going to be a close game. And I think the Eagles, they're obviously at a point where they need to prove a lot. Now, if it was a full, healthy Buccaneers squad, I'm right there with you. I think the Buccaneers cover the spread. And the spread is 8.5, I believe. So Buccaneers would have to win by 9. But with that injured squad that they have, it just makes a pause for me going, the Eagles can get the job done if they can play keep away from Brady. And they almost did it early in the regular season.
All right, I was actually incorrect about the Eagles. They played 11 teams that are not playoff teams. 11. Only, I mean, they were 9-2 against them. but they were 0-8 against playoff teams. Or no, they were 0-6 against playoff teams. So yeah, I mean, you're right. They played teams close, but both games that they played close with playoff teams were the 49ers and the Buccaneers. Both of those were in Philly, which a lot have said is one of the tougher places to play. Another team they played close that was really close to the playoffs was the Chargers. That game was also in Philly. So most of the Eagles' close losses, the only three teams that they played that were good, that they had close losses with, were at home. So as a huge Eagles guy, I just don't see it. I don't see a way that the Eagles win. You said it, though. That rushing attack is deadly. So if somehow they can get going against that Tampa Bay defense, then yeah, they're going to have a shot. But I don't see a way that they do. So for that reason, I'm out. Like, it's Shark Tank.
Okay. I mean, okay. That I can respect that. I can respect that. I wanna talk about. Well, we talked about the Colts to start off the pod, and you went into the Colts shouldn't fire Frank Reich. Why don't you think that the Colts shouldn't fire Frank Reich, and what should the Colts do moving forward with Frank Reich? You're muted, Mike.
Oh, my bad. I just don't think there's a point. You look at all the other coaches that got fired: Mike Zimmer, Brian Flores, Matt Nagy.
Mm-hmm.
Who else got Vic Fangio? None of those. I mean, Brian Flores was a terrible firing. I don't really even want to talk about it.
Yeah.
But all those guys deserved it, obviously, except Brian Flores. Frank Reich he led him to the playoffs last year. Honestly, should have led him to the playoffs this year. I really don't know how they choked. I guess you can, if you want to blame one game on Frank Reich, then do what you want. But Frank Reich, going into this game, was third in Coach of the Year odds. He was third in Coach of the Year odds, and it's not just you, me and you. It's a bunch of other people are talking about the Colts need to fire Frank Reich. No one said that before the Jags game. No one was saying he needs to be fired before the Jags game. So one game, I get it. It was terrible. It was terrible. It was an embarrassment, one of the most embarrassing games probably in the history of the Colts organization. But you don't fire a guy over just one game. Some people might, but I just don't agree with that. So what do they need to do going forward? They just get better. I don't think that they need to make any major changes to the roster. I think Carson Wentz is a guy you can win with. I think Frank Reich is a coach you can win with. And unfortunately, they just had a few things go wrong in the beginning of the season that didn't allow them to lose any of these close games. They, unfortunately for them, lost 2 of them late in the season. So don't fire Frank Reich. Give him a shot. But like I said earlier, he's gonna have an extremely tight leash.
Yeah, his leash. He's gonna be on a short leash, and if he's going to the playoffs 50%, or if he's going to the playoffs 50%, 2 out of the 4 seasons that he's been there, I see success in that. And I'm not going to get into Brian Flores as well, but I don't think Frank Reich should be fired. I think Frank Reich just got to look at that game. He's got to look at all the games that where did they mess up at the most, and why did we mess up there? I think just needs to be a reevaluation, and there just needs to be another point of emphasis as to what do we need to do to get to the point that we want it to be, and that's the playoffs, and further from the playoffs, the Super Bowl. So I think after next year, if it's the same result, I wouldn't be surprised that he's fired, but as of right now, he shouldn't be fired. And I love the point that you brought out after one game, because then Sean McDermott should be on the hot seat after the Bills lost to the Jags 9-0. You see, no one's talking about that. So I don't think someone should be fired off of just one performance.
I really like what you said. If they don't make the playoffs next year, he should be on the hot seat. If they don't make the playoffs next year, fire him. There's no doubt in my mind that he will be fired. In fact, if the Colts don't make the playoffs next year, because this team they're fairly young. They got one of the best O-lines in the league when healthy, which it wasn't in the beginning of the year. It wasn't for a couple games down the stretch, but that's why Jonathan Taylor has the rushing title. That's why Carson Wentz was able to have a successful bounce back season because of this O-line. So yeah, there's a lot of young pieces on this team. So if the Colts are not successful next year, and by successful, I mean make the playoffs, maybe even if they don't win a game in the playoffs, fire Frank Reich because he's the issue because this team has so much talent. If you can't do something with it, then you deserve to be fired. But there's just so many circumstances going on inside the Colts locker room this year that I don't think that he should be fired. So, yeah, give him one more year, and then you see how it plays out next year.
Speaking of seeing how it plays out, who do we trust more, Mr. Wood, the Bengals or the Raiders?
Ooh, Joe Shiesty versus Derek Carr and the depleted Raiders. The Raiders that belong not in the playoffs, they belong in Cancun. They belong in county jail with Henry Ruggs. This team does not belong in the playoffs. I'm serious. You lose your head coach, you lose your best receiver, and you're telling me they're in the playoffs? Not even did they lose their best receiver. Like he didn't go out with injury. This man killed somebody in the middle of the season. You had to deal with everything that was going on with your locker room. Then your coach came out. Not your coach didn't come out. Your coach got put on a hot seat. Everybody saw that he was a racist. He was homophobic, and I'm sure many other things. So then he gets fired. You lose your best receiver. And one thing stays constant. It's Derek Carr, level-headed guy, a guy I really, really like. Not a lot of people are high on Derek Carr, but I love Derek Carr. And just everything that this Raiders team has gone through, I think they have every motivation within them to win this game. They'll have extra motivation because the playoff game. Derek Carr has never played in the playoffs in his career. I don't think so. He's deserved it more than any player on this Raiders team. And their interim head coach has done a really, really good job, and he's fighting for a job every single week in, week out. He's fighting for a job, whereas Zach Taylor knows that he's got his job next year. He just led the Bengals to the playoffs. Who would have thought? So Zach Taylor has his job locked up in Cincinnati. Rich Bisaccia, I think that's how you pronounce it, the interim head coach in Vegas, does not have it locked up. This man barely has next 24 hours guaranteed. So the Raiders are winning this game. I'm telling you right now, Raiders are winning this game. Rich Bisaccia is not letting them lose. Derek Carr is not letting them lose. John Jacobs is not letting him lose. Hunter Renfrow is not letting him lose. And I'm sure that defense, which has been pretty good, they got a great front four. They're not going to let them lose. Raiders winning this game.
You know what's funny? With all Joe Burrow's success and everything that's going well with the Bengals, Joe Burrow is still the most sacked quarterback in the NFL. You know what you just mentioned? That the Raiders have a great front defensive line that knows how to get after the ball. Yannick Ngakoue, Max Crosby, Carl Nassib. The list goes on and on and on how great that defensive line is one of the themes of that Raider squad. And you lose to Washington. Washington goes down, game-winning drive. You get blown out by Kansas City. So now you're at a position where you have to go into Indianapolis, and then you're back home against the Chargers. And if you win those two games, you're possibly in the playoffs. The amount of tragedies and the amount of drama that this team has been through, from Darren Waller being injured for most of the season, from Dallin Arnett going on Instagram Live and showing a prop of his gun, from Henry Ruggs, from John Gruden, and the list goes on and on and on and on how much stuff has been going on. If the MVP award was just basically who's the most valuable player without like any stats or anything, I would give it to Derek Carr. Because if Derek Carr wasn't even on that Raiders squad, I don't even know where the Raiders would be right now. They would definitely not be in the playoffs. They would be somewhere in a forsaken hole. So I got the Raiders in this one too. I trust the Raiders way more than I trust the Bengals, because the Bengals, they have all this firepower and everything. This is Jamar Chase's first playoff game. This is Joe Burrow's first playoff game. This is Zach Taylor's first playoff game. I can keep on going on and on and on with this. And the last time they won a playoff game was 1993.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I could really go into it talk about how Joe Burrow, by the way, ice in his veins. I'm a huge Joe Burrow fan. I think he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and he will be for a long time. But you said something that I actually told my dad and my brother last night. Derek Carr is the MVP. I truthfully believe that Derek Carr deserves to get not to win it. His stats aren't nearly good enough. Aaron Rodgers is the MVP, but I do think Derek Carr deserves to be in the talks. I mean, seriously, what other quarterback has gone through as much as Derek Carr has gone through and made the playoffs? Carson Wentz is the only one who even went through remotely the same amount of stuff. That obviously not even close, and he's out of the playoffs. Carson Wentz went through a lot, just like Derek Carr went through. He's out of the playoffs. Sean Payton and the Saints, whoever their quarterback was, they went through a lot, not in the playoffs. Any team you name that went through a lot of struggles this season is not in the playoffs. I mean, seriously, every team that went through struggles, that like big struggles, is not in the playoffs. I mean, I guess the Buccaneers with Antonio Brown, but that was like the last game of the season, so it doesn't really matter.
Right.
Derek Carr has carried this team, not necessarily as a player, but as a leader, and I love to see it. Huge Derek Carr guy, but it's a lot of players' first playoff games on both teams because both these teams have been out of the playoffs for some time. So I'm really excited. I'm not trusting anyone's playoff experience more than anyone else's. I'm just trusting in Derek Carr because this whole season he's done one thing, and that's find a way. And I expect him to do it again in Cincinnati. So I'm really excited. I think this might be one of the better playoff games this season.
Yeah, I can't wait. I can't wait for these playoff games. I think every single one is going to live up to the hype, and that's what you love to see in the playoffs. Speaking of living up to the hype, the Bears interviewed Brian Flores today. So should they just stop the shenanigans and hire Brian Flores now? Like, who should be the Bears' next head coach?
Brian Flores, end of discussion. I'm cool with it. He's a defensive-minded guy. Defensive-minded guy. You have a great young defense with some veteran players, obviously, Khalil Mack, Robert Quinn. He brings that team to the next level. You got Justin Fields, who is going to blossom into a really good quarterback. I think if Brian Flores wants that job, it's his. That's the best. I think that's, in my personal opinion, besides the Raiders' job, if the Raiders' job becomes available, the Bears' job is the best job that a coach can get. So I think, yeah, Brian Flores should be the Bears' next head coach. It's only if he wants it. And personally, Chicago's one of my teams. Obviously, I'm an Eagles fan, but then the Bears and Packers are 2 and 3, kind of equal 2A and 2B. So yeah, I kind of hope that they hire Brian Flores for the Bears' sake, bring him back to relevancy. But knowing Chicago, they'll probably look at like Doug Peterson. He's not a bad. And listen, Doug Peterson's not a bad coach. It's just like he's probably the worst guy that you can bring into Chicago because what do you have? You have a defense. You have a young quarterback. You don't want to bring in a guy like Doug Peterson who tries to pull out all these tricks because that just messes with a young quarterback. We saw it with Carson Wentz. Even when Jalen Hurts came in, Jalen Hurts did not play very good football with Doug Peterson. So Brian Flores Tua's been pretty successful. Brian Flores will allow Justin Fields to be himself. So hopefully it's Brian Flores.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Brian Flores, that's end of discussion. That's such a Bears thing to do if they went out and get Doug Peterson. I wouldn't be surprised if like Joe Judge was on the market and they're like, what?
My God.
You know what? We're done with everything. Let's go get Joe Judge. Because that's something the Bears would do. It's such a Bears thing. Oh Lord. Anywho, are you more shocked about the Colts not making the playoffs or the Raiders making the playoffs?
That's tough. Because of the season that they've had, I'm going to say the Raiders. Mm-hmm. But that's not to say I'm not absolutely flabbergasted that the Colts didn't make it. I mean, you tell me the Colts need to beat the Jacksonville Jaguars to make it to the playoffs. I'm telling you, buy me a ticket to the playoffs to watch Carson Wentz play because that's how confident I would have been in the Colts making the playoffs. But we've talked about it multiple times already. Derek Carr, man, I never would have expected this from him. Like I keep saying the same things over and over. I'm a big Derek Carr guy, but I did not expect him to be able to pull this off. I don't think I would have expected anyone to pull it off because this wasn't just a sheer talent thing. This was a leadership. This was a character thing. And Derek Carr possessed all the correct traits to bring this team, not to the promised land because they're not quite there yet, but he brought them to the NFL playoffs, which is something that they've been waiting a place they've been waiting to go for a long time, Derek Carr, and I'm really happy that they did it. So yeah, I'm more surprised the Raiders did it just because everything that went wrong for an NFL team, literally anything possible, pretty much went wrong for this team, and they overcame all the obstacles. So extremely proud of the Las Vegas Raiders and extremely disappointed in the Indianapolis Colts because, like I said, my surprise for the Raiders making the playoffs does not overshadow my disappointment in Carson Wentz, Frank Reich, Jonathan Taylor, and those boys in Indianapolis. So definitely more surprised the Raiders made it, but close behind is obviously the Colts just shanking an easy opportunity against the Jaguars.
Yeah, I mean, if I would have went back in time and told my past self the Raiders are going to make the playoffs this year, and I tell them everything that happens with the Raiders, I'm gonna be like, that's crazy. Like you are smoking crack, job. Or if I told them the Colts, the last two games they have is the depleted Raiders and the Jacksonville Jaguars in the playoffs, and they don't make it, it's the same conversation. So I think nothing overshadows it. But for the sake of picking a side here and not Max Kellerman, I'm gonna say the Colts. I think the Colts is most shocking because they had these two games that were laid up to them, and coming off a win against New England and doing what they've been doing throughout that whole stretch of games, it's just like, wow, like you guys really fumbled the bag and couldn't make the playoffs. It's just something that you like, it's like an eye opener. But I agree with what you said that it doesn't overshadow with the Raiders. It's as astronomical as it is the Colts making the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, both are equally surprising in their own right. But I seriously, the Raiders season is something you see in like a movie. The Colts losing to the Jaguars, that's happened time and time again. You said like the Bills lost to the Jaguars, and I mean, I guess those were the only two teams, right? But
Yeah.
but no, it happens. I mean, the Jets and the Lions. Jets last year, Lions this year have both been successful playing against okay competition at times. So yeah, we've seen bad teams beat good teams. I don't think ever have seen a team go through as much as the Raiders have gone through and still make the playoffs. And honestly, looking at the playoff picture, they have a chance. Makes real noise in the AFC. So I'm excited. But yeah, definitely Raiders.
I'm excited too. So, which player will be impacted the most if their team wins the Super Bowl this season?
I mean, that's easily this guy's been fighting for however many years he's been in the league to try and prove himself. A lot of people say he doesn't have enough rings, so it's obviously going to be Tom Brady. No, I'm just kidding. It's Aaron Rodgers. Tom Brady's legacy is cemented. No, if Tom Brady gets to 12 rings, I don't think that changes how I look at him currently. He's already untouchable. I don't think anyone's getting 7. But Aaron Rodgers is a guy who I've personally argued he's the best quarterback of all time for years now. I mean, I remember going back high school, like freshman year, I would have this argument that he was just so much more talented. And a thing I used to love to say, and I've heard you say it to people before, there's not a single throw that Tom Brady can make that Aaron Rodgers can't make. Aaron Rodgers can make 45 throws that Tom Brady and nobody else in the world can make, not even Patrick Mahomes. Aaron Rodgers is so talented, it's unreal. But the legacy is what matters. And legacy, Jimmy Johnson talked about it. I can't remember what he was on. He was talking with Howie Long. I don't really remember who he was talking to, but he said no one cares about the stats. No one cares how many touchdowns, how many yards. You tell me who has the most passing yards in their career and tell me how many it is. No one knows. You tell me who has the most rings. Tom Brady's got 7. How many rings does Peyton have? Peyton's got 2. How many rings does Drew Brees has? Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers, he's got 1. So it's like rings is what matters at the end of the day. As unfortunate as it is, it's a team sport. Aaron Rodgers needs to get at least this one. Hopefully he can continue to gather up more for his sake and his legacy's sake, because he can make a real case for being the GOAT, but sitting at 1 ring just isn't going to cut it. So Aaron Rodgers' legacy, definitely would be impacted the most. But a player that's not far behind, a player that is not far behind is Julio Jones.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I felt like we were going all quarterbacks. We were going to go all quarterbacks here, so I wanted to bring in a receiver.
Mm-hmm.
This could separate Julio. Julio would have to play really good in this playoff run because his season's been like he's been hurt. He hasn't played that great. Only has one touchdown. So Julio would have to play really, really good in the playoffs. And obviously, if they made the Super Bowl, really, really good in the Super Bowl. But could you imagine Julio Jones wins the Super Bowl MVP? Because Calvin Johnson's a guy that currently I have over Julio Jones. Antonio Brown is a guy I have over Julio Jones. But if Julio Jones dominates the Super Bowl, and like dominates the playoffs in his way into the Super Bowl, which I'm not saying is going to happen because they're going to get Derek Henry back, but Julio Jones can really, really make a stamp. And if he plays a huge part, Julio Jones could go down. He's not passing Jerry Rice, but a lot of people might move him to like number 2, number 3. So Julio's legacy could be impacted greatly by a Super Bowl. Not as much as Aaron Rodgers, though, who just is going to completely separate himself from everyone else besides Tom Brady, Peyton Manning.
I want to go down the Brady route. I really do, because I was preparing for the Brady route, and I'll kind of explain it. Like, Brady is at a point where what he was in his New England is, where New England offensively and sometimes defensively, when he didn't make the Super Bowl, they were depleted, right? And he would lean on guys like Julian Edelman, Damian Amendola, so on and so forth to lead him to the promised land. And he did that. So I think if Brady wins this Super Bowl, for him, that solidifies his legacy as to no one's touching him as a GOAT because of rings. And he literally just took a team with dealing with all this Antonio Brown drama, dealing with no Chris Godwin, just Mike Evans, and a depleted defense, that this is the first time Brady won a Super Bowl with not a top 10 defense. That wouldn't be an argument anymore. So that would just solidify Brady's position. But I'm gonna go down a different route. We've been praising this man all the show. So I'm gonna keep on praising him some more. Derek Carr. If Derek Carr and the Raiders somehow, some way get to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl, they're making a 30 for 30. They're making a 30 for 30 on this team. And not only that, I think Derek Carr's legacy going forward as a leader will be one of the greatest leaders to ever be on a football field. Like, I think it will have that type of incline.
You gotta stop talking.
Towards that stratosphere.
You're giving me goosebumps right now, John, talking about if the
Like,
I don't think it's possible in any world. But if the Raiders win the Super Bowl, I don't know what that would be. Like, I'm seriously, I got goosebumps. You can't see them because it's a poor quality camera. But if the Raiders, oh my goodness, if they win the Super Bowl, not Derek Carr, obviously he's not going to go down as a top 10 quarterback just off one Super Bowl. But like you said, you could make the argument he might be one of the greatest leaders in the history of the sport, because this team, that's a really good route. I like that. I have no disagreement with that would impact his legacy greatly. I like that answer.
Yeah, because I was gonna say Matt Stafford, but everyone knows Matt Stafford's in like a Super Bowl or bust situation. But now if the Bills don't make the Super Bowl, I'm rooting for the Raiders. That's all I can say, because I really want this Raiders team to succeed. And I really want to see the 30 to 30 too.
Yeah, that's my team is the Raiders is play. It's the Raiders, Eagles, and Packers are my 3. And I guess the Titans, I don't know. When I root for NFL teams besides the Eagles, I kind of root for players. Derek Carr is my second favorite quarterback behind Carson Wentz. Derek Henry, Aaron Rodgers is probably number 1, and then Carson, then Derek. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of teams that I'm kind of pulling for. Unfortunately, one of them is not your Bills. And for some reason, I just when I think about the Bills, they're so good that they're kind of a team I think of, and I'm like, oh, they've already won. Although they haven't, they're just that good that I'm like, oh, they're already a team that's won. So why would I root for them? I'm just getting annoyed at the Bills at this point because they've been good the past 2 years.
No, yeah,
Um,
I mean, it was a tough time back in the day for like the Bills just keep on losing. But it was fun though.
yeah, it's the playoffs are going to be really, really exciting. I honestly think any team can pull off an upset this weekend. Unfortunately, except the Eagles. The Eagles are the only team that I'm almost 100% to guarantee that they're not going to win. But they're my team, so I'm going to give the Eagles a 20% chance of winning against the Bucks, which is probably pretty high.
Yeah, I think that's the highest that you'll hear someone besides me say the Eagles' percentages of winning that football game. So
Well, yeah, ESPN gives them a 22% chance. So we'll see.
it's gonna be a good wild card weekend. I can't wait. It's gonna be something. It's gonna be something. Ooh, ooh, ooh. That's the show for today. If you're a friendly bettor listening to this, I would say put money on the Eagles spread. Just be confident. Sprinkle some money on that. Sprinkle some money on the Bills too. For the courtesy of me and Josh Allen and a bunch of the Bills Mafia. We thank you for that. Anywho, subscribe to our podcast on all podcast platforms and YouTube. Give us a nice little like and comment on our YouTube videos, on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Give us a nice little follow at 1497 Podcast. We will be back at a random time on Thursday, and we'll be back on Monday. I'm Jonathan Keaton. Right beside me is the greatest co-host that walked the planet, Michael Wood. And we got to prepare for our teams to possibly win the bowl. Come on. We out.